Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 5 of B-Road Ballers, the review series for the hot hatches of Gran Turismo 6. And in this episode we're featuring a legendary hot hatch, one of the oldest hot hatches around, the Renault 5 Turbo. This is of course a mid-engine rear-wheel drive hot hatch, which is one of the few available in that format on Gran Turismo, alongside the Clio V6 and of course the Peugeot 205 Turbo 16. But what does this particular car have to offer in the hot hatch category? Because obviously it is a legendary rallying machine, but not that well used as far as a road racer. So how does it compare to the other hot hatches that are available on the game? Well, as far as its specs, it's pretty healthy. It's not necessarily the most impressive hatchback in the game on paper, but it is a very strong all-round car. Now, its price is pretty high for a hot hatch. It is one of the more expensive hot hatches on the game at 74,500 credits, so just under 75 grand, which is a lot of money for a hot hatch, and the majority of that price is due to this car's historical significance, rather than any performance that it may be endowed with. But what performance does it have to offer? Well, the engine of course is a 1.4 litre, mid-mounted as we already said, and fairly obviously turbocharged. It's written on the back window of the car, so not surprisingly. And fully tuned, it produces a very healthy amount of power for the engine size. A 1.4 litre is very small, and back in the day when this car was produced, it's even more impressive, arguably, than the power that you could get from that kind of engine by today's standards. Now, fully tuned, this engine puts out 344 horsepower, which for a 1.4 litre is very impressive. And it puts out 261 pound-feet of torque, which again is very healthy for such a small capacity engine. The car itself is also very light, at only 848 kilos with the full weight loss package, and thanks to that low weight, even though it doesn't have anywhere near the most horsepower of hot hatches on the game, it still has a very good power to weight ratio of 406 horsepower per tonne, which for its power is very good. Now, as we said, it's a mid-engine rear-wheel drive hatchback, and as such it has quite unique handling characteristics. It has quite a wide track at the rear, not so much at the front, and it is of course a relatively short wheelbase car. And being as it is a mid-engine vehicle, the front engine, or the front of the car, can be a little bit light, and in the case of this car it is. The handling is a little bit temperamental with the Renault 5 Turbo. Now, it's certainly not a bad handling car. Far from it. It's a very competitive machine, especially for its power. But it's definitely not the easiest of hot hatches to get a hang of. It takes at the very least a couple of laps before you really get used to the car. Whereas with most hot hatches, you can just jump in and drive fast. Whereas with this car, you will find yourself wheel spinning and sliding quite a bit. Now, in the car that I'm actually running here, I am running quite a lot of ballast over the front end because it doesn't have the best of weight distributions, but with ballast it does improve the car a lot. Now, it's still not the easiest or best handling of hatchbacks to drive, but it is certainly very advantageous in certain ways, and one of those ways is the sharpness of the turn-in. This car can outmaneuver many other hot hatches, especially on very, very tight tracks such as city tracks like London. On tracks like that, this car has a huge advantage in both size and manoeuvrability over many of the modern hot hatches, which seem to be just getting bigger and bigger with each generation. Now, in terms of sheer straight line performance, not surprisingly for a 344 horsepower car, it's not the strongest of hot hatches. Now, off the line, it's actually pretty good for its power, mainly because of being rear-wheel drive. Plus, the mid-engine gets more of the weight over the drive wheels, which helps it to wheel spin much less off the line and accelerate a lot quicker off the line than many front-wheel drive hatchbacks. And in terms of top speed, you're looking at around the 170, 180 mile per hour region fully tuned. So again, for its power, not bad at all, especially for a vehicle that was never designed for top speed, but was designed primarily for handling and acceleration, being as it is a rally car at heart. Overall, the performance is not necessarily the strongest of hot hatches, but it is very good, and as I said, it does have certain advantages, the primary one being how nimble and sharp it is around corners. But overall, I would say the Renault 5 Turbo is more of a seasoned driver's car. It's not a car which I would recommend to people who have just started playing Gran Turismo or who have little to no experience with driving tricky handling vehicles. Because although, as I said, it's certainly not a bad handling car, it does take more experience to really get a feel for what this car is going to do. And even then, sometimes it can still surprise you by suddenly getting the tail out around corners, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It makes for a very fun car to drive, and it is a great cruising car just to throw around the track for fun, rather than trying to set lap times or necessarily winning races. So in terms of value for money, yeah, it's pretty expensive. From a historical point of view, it's definitely worth the money. From a performance point of view, it's probably worth more around the 40 grand region, I would say. So 75 grand is a bit steep for how powerful and fast the vehicle is, but for someone who's looking for a hot hatch which is genuinely different to everything else, because at the end of the day, even its main rival, the Peugeot T16, is not rear-wheel drive, although it's mid-engine, so this car is really unique among the hot hatch category. And for people who are looking for something truly different, this is a very viable alternative to the mainstream hot hatches. But that's it for this episode. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.